She walked into the blind date with hidden strengths. What the CEO discovered was transformational. Sarah fidgeted with her napkin, replaying her brother's teasing encouragement in her mind. Just be yourself. But who was that really? In the upscale cafe, with its polished metal accents and hushed conversations, she felt small. At 32, she was a graduate student in psychology, a mother to spirited Ethan, and knee-deep in student debt that loomed over her like dark clouds. As she surveyed the room, she was struck by how the laughter of her peers echoed in her ears, reminders of what success looked like, not for her, but for them. Her heart raced, not just from nerves, but from the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. As David arrived, sharp suit, confident stride, Sarah's mind spiraled. He was the CEO of a tech startup, a figure she was all too aware of, even in the murmur of the Chicago business scene. She half expected him to walk into the cafe looking for the next power move, the next connection that could skyrocket his ambitions higher. But here he was, extending a hand, his smile sincere but damagingly out of her league. "Hey, I'm David," he said, as she took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip. She searched for words, found humor instead. "So you're not just a tech whiz, but a matchmaker too?" The tension in her shoulder eased slightly, but beneath the surface, anxiety pulled at her. For a moment, their banter felt light until her laughter faded. What was she really doing here? She realized that sharing this evening with a man who might only see her as a distraction made her skin prickle. It was as if the shadows of self-doubt had come alive, whispering, "Do you belong here?" Before she could process her spiraling thoughts, David leaned in, curiosity sparking in his eyes. "Tell me about your studies. What drives you?" His question shifted the gears in her mind. She hesitated. Should she share her ambitions and the crushing exhaustion that followed late-night study sessions with Ethan? Could she reveal her fear of being yet another overqualified single mother, overshadowed by the accomplishments of those around her? Would he listen, or would he dismiss her struggles as trivial? "I want to understand people, help them navigate their minds. But—" She stopped abruptly, thinking of her family's tumultuous past. The bakery that once stood as a beloved community hub, ripped away by a corporate giant. Her heart squeezed painfully, memories rushing through her. Finally, the words tumbled out. "My family's bakery was taken unfairly, and it feels like justice has eluded us. I fear I'm trapped in the shadow of that loss, trying to carve out my own path, terrified I'll never measure up." David's expression shifted. She sensed the shift, the weight of their conversation deepening. She spoke with fierce determination, but raw anguish, confronting the stark divide between them. His life, filled with privilege and opportunity, collided with her struggle. Before she could answer, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, the waiter approached with a dessert. "What'd you order?" Sarah asked, smile feigning confidence, a mask she didn't quite believe herself. "Just a little surprise," he replied, still considering. But in that moment, swirling emotions bubbled between them, igniting questions neither had expected to confront this evening. The storm outside rumbled in sync with their growing connection. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now, let's continue. But just as their guard began to lower, reality crashed back. David's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. As he shot a glance at the screen, Sarah felt a pang of anxiety. What did this mean for them? The conversation hung suspended in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Would he prioritize career ambitions over this unforeseen revelation of connection? As the dinner drew to a close and the chatter of the cafe faded, Sarah's heart raced with the weight of possibilities, both thrilling and terrifying. She realized she was at a threshold, teetering between worlds, the lure of hope and the fear of stifling disappointment. Would they both find the courage not only to navigate their baggage, but also the potential of something transformative? As the waiter cleared their plates, Sarah felt a familiar knot grow tighter in her stomach. David's phone wasn't just a distraction, it was a possible harbinger of their impending separation. She watched him type a quick response, the slight furrow of his brow hinting at the weight of the world beyond their moment. Would the allure of his fast-paced world pull him back in before he had a chance to truly see her? "Sorry about that," he said, finally returning his focus to her. "Work is relentless sometimes." "It's okay," she replied, forcing a casualness she didn't feel. The last thing she wanted was to appear needy or desperate for his attention. But deep inside, questions churned. Was she destined to be just another fleeting moment in his busy life? "Actually, I'd love to hear more about your studies. What has shaped your appreciation for psychology?" His tone was genuine, but beneath it lay an urgency that made her heart race again. Not just from anxiety, but from the thrilling prospect of pouring herself into something meaningful. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the fierce drive she had harbored for years. "Understanding people is like piecing together a complex puzzle. It helps me confront my own disarray. You know, a single mom facing the pressures of academic life fuels a sizable introspection." His interest seemed genuine, and a spark ignited within her. "When my family lost the bakery, I stopped viewing loss as just a void. Instead, it became the catalyst for my passion. I want to help others turn their struggles into strengths." David nodded, a spark of recognition in his eyes. "That's powerful," he said, his tone carrying sincerity that cut through her self-doubt. "Transforming pain into purpose is a profound journey. Every day in my business demands resilience. Maybe I could learn something from your perspective." The acknowledgement gave her confidence, pulling her from the depths of her insecurities. For once, she felt empowered, not just as a struggling graduate student, but a potential equal in this conversation. But just as she began to revel in this newfound strength, doubts fluttered at the edges of her mind, questioning if David truly understood. "Do you really think my experiences can translate to what you deal with in the tech industry?" she prodded softly. "Absolutely. Every industry revolves around people, consumers, clients, teams. Understanding motivation can propel businesses forward." His eyes were steady, and for a fleeting moment she saw connection run deeper than before. But then a shadow flickered across his features. Suddenly, his expression shifted. "I need to take care of something at the office tonight," he sighed, a flicker of conflict flashing in his eyes. "I can't ignore it." Tension cracked the moment, and instinctively she pulled back, a sense of loss already invading the space between them. Would this turn into another dead-end connection like so many before? "Of course," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Responsibilities are part of life." But inside, the walls she'd built began to feel constricting. Her heart raced, desperate for more than just this fleeting moment, with someone who, for the first time in ages, made her feel seen. "I'd really like to continue this conversation," David offered, a hint of regret lacing his tone. "Could we set something up?" "Yes," she blurted, surprising herself. "I'd like that." As he got up to leave, she faced the truth head-on. Beneath the weight of her worries, something stirred. A desire to take control, to redefine her narrative. Was she prepared to embrace this unexpected chance? David paused at the door, looking back, uncertainty edged with hope in his gaze. "Let's not wait too long." As the door swung shut behind him, the finality of the moment settled in. She was left with a lingering question. How would she summon the courage to keep moving forward, carving out both her personal and professional identity, both fiercely pursuing her dreams while navigating the unpredictability of connection? Tonight revealed not only her fragility, but also a daring potential to step into a new chapter of her life. But just as she began to envision the road ahead, her phone buzzed on the table, perhaps another anchor to her past that would tempt her to retreat. What awaited her when she dared to face it? The moment Sarah's phone vibrated against the table, the noise shot through her like an electric shock. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the screen, a vortex of anticipation clashing with apprehension. The familiar dread, messages from her past that she wished to erase, whirled within her. But this time, instead of retreating, she felt an unexpected pulse of determination. Each notification had the power to draw her back into a life of chaos, to revisit the familiar patterns of fear and uncertainty. But she questioned whether she wanted to remain trapped by those ghosts. Could she break free by re-examining her connections, both personal and professional? The buzzing continued, demanding her attention, but she found herself more curious about her own readiness to tackle these challenges than the urge to respond. With a decisive flick, she silenced the notifications and took a deep breath. Tonight had felt different, charged with possibilities. It was as if David's interest breathed new life into her dreams. Would she continue walking down the same worn path of self-doubt, or would she finally choose to forge a new direction, bound by her desires? Sarah grabbed a notebook she often used for class, its pages filled with crisscrossed thoughts and psychology theories, notes that felt more like affirmations than academic scribbles. She flipped to a blank page and let her mind flow. What would I want if I dared to take control? In that moment of clarity, she poured out her aspirations, professional ambitions, her fierce love for her son, the lingering wounds from the bakery's closure, and the passionate desire to transform her psychology studies into a vocation that could inspire others. Filling the page illuminated something profound. Hidden strengths lay dormant within her. Insights from trauma could unify theory and practice, a fusion that could serve as a guiding light for many. The more she wrote, the more she realized she held the keys to her own reinvention. Hesitation flowed into action as she outlined a plan. Networking events, speaking engagements, volunteering her psychology insights with local groups. What had once seemed daunting now felt invigorating. Would it be enough to propel her forward? To cast aside the remnants of fear and emerge as the woman she dreamed of becoming? Sarah's heartbeat shifted from tension to an exhilarating rhythm, propelling her toward the future she deserved. She knew David's interest was not a mere distraction. It symbolized an opportunity to bridge her personal life with her professional aspirations. As she penned earnest phrases like "embrace vulnerability" and "seek authentic connections," she heard the clock on the wall tick, each second a reminder that life didn't wait for anyone. And what if the upcoming meeting with David offered her clarity? Perhaps he could illuminate her journey, and, if she played her cards right, this blossoming relationship might blossom into something more than she expected. With renewed resolve, she glanced outside. The streetlights had flickered on, casting a soft glow that mirrored her growing warmth from within. She envisioned walking into that next meeting with David, confident and unafraid. The prospect held both excitement and apprehension, hallmarks of growth. Just as the night deepened, her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from a number she didn't recognize. Curiosity pulled her cautiously, wondering if it was a continuation of her past or perhaps a new thread forming. She felt the weight of the moment pressing against her as she opened the message, revealing something that could alter her path substantially. Who was reaching out, and what did it mean for the steps she was ready to take? As Sarah opened the message, her heart raced. It was from an online professional network she had joined months ago. "Hi, Sarah. We're impressed by your profile. Would you be interested in presenting at our upcoming seminar on mental health and resilience?" The invitation felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Present? Speak? The audacity of it all sent her spinning. On one hand, the thrill of recognition ignited her ambition. On the other, an avalanche of insecurity followed. Who would want to listen to her? Still, the word resilience resonated deep within her. After all, wasn't that the essence of her journey? Taking a breath, she set her phone down. This moment represented more than just a chance to speak. It could be a pivotal step toward overcoming the fragments of self-doubt that had haunted her. Yet, the pull of the familiar darkness lingered as she thought of what came before. The failed bakery, the lost connections, the unraveling of her self-worth. She grabbed her notebook again, her fingers trembling slightly. Strategy was her stronghold. "Assess the opportunity," she wrote. "Find your voice and allow fear to drive your preparation instead of paralyzing you." Her mind began whirring with ideas. This was her chance to meld her experiences with her studies. She could speak on coping strategies influenced by her psychology insights. She remembered nights spent in the bakery, dishing out pastries while her mind churned on the human psyche. Those moments were touchstones, reminders that she had harnessed her pain and frustration into creative endeavors before. Now it was time to convert that knowledge into a meaningful moment of influence. Feeling invigorated, Sarah closed the notebook, her resolve solidifying further. David's meeting became more than just a social obligation. It could now be her rehearsal dinner for a new life, an opening act for the real show she was just beginning to write. Yet as she steeled herself for this new chapter, the looming question remained. How would she reconcile her past with this path forward? Was she brave enough to confront the ghosts that had long since clouded her potential? On the eve of her professional awakening, she sought more than just confidence. She needed clarity. Was David merely a catalyst in her journey, or could he become an ally as she faced the ghosts of rejection that had clung to her for too long? Thoughts of their impending meeting flooded her senses, filling her with anticipation, mingled with fear. Shifting her focus from the message to the meeting, she found herself contemplating the fusion of their two lives. Could a conversation with David fuel her ambition? The prospect sent a crackle of excitement through her. What if their discussions unveiled deeper insights? What if his experiences opened doors she hadn't dared to imagine? As she prepared mentally for the interaction, she envisioned each potential fault line from her past, hoping to examine them with a critical eye. She envisioned a cry of liberation surging through, propelled by honesty, determination, and maybe a generous touch of courage. Dusk settled around her, encapsulating her in a cocoon of warm hope. Sarah grabbed her phone, hovering over the text invitation once again. Who would she become in this unexpected role? What truths might her journey impart to others? With a deep breath, she typed a reply, her fingers dancing across the screen. "Thank you for considering me. I would be honored to present." She sent the message, the act resembling a small revolution. The moment felt tangible, electric. Sarah was stepping onto a path she could shape. Yet, as she lingered in the thrill of her decision, an unsettling thought crept in. What vulnerability would she have to face, and would it break her or mend her? Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, interrupting her reverie. It was David, innocently asking about their meeting time and place, a gentle nudge into a shared destiny she had yet to fully grasp. How would their conversation unfold, and what depths would they reach together? She felt the weight of promise and question blend into one. The time had come to face her past and embrace her future. Would she have the strength to rise? Sarah arrived at the cafe a few minutes early, her heart racing as she approached the entrance. This place, with its warm ambiance and the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air, contrasted sharply with the whirlpool of thoughts spinning in her mind. She brushed a hand through her hair and straightened her blazer, feeling the weight of her decision to accept the speaking opportunity now pressing upon her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside, scanning the room. David sat at a corner table, a laptop open in front of him, typing away with focused determination. He looked up and smiled, an openness in his expression that immediately eased some of her tension. "Hi, Sarah. It's great to finally meet you," he said, gesturing for her to sit. As she settled opposite him, she felt a flicker of recognition, the kind that sparks when two people resonate on the same wavelength, something she hadn't felt in a while. "Thanks. I appreciate you making time for this," she replied, forcing a smile that felt a bit strained around the edges. His warm demeanor coaxed her out of her shell, but her insecurities loomed large just beneath the surface. In the early moments of their conversation, the focus shifted naturally to her newfound speaking opportunity. David asked about her inspiration and her journey, the kind of questions she had rehearsed in her mind, yet was now utterly unprepared for in real time. Describing her failures at the bakery felt oddly cathartic. The words tumbled out, rich with raw honesty, cloaked in the muscle memory of years spent hiding behind self-doubt. What if I tell my story and no one connects? What if I'm unworthy? She found herself saying, her voice barely above a whisper during a brief pause in their conversation. David leaned back, considering her thoughtfully. Your story is inherently valuable. Think about it this way. Every person who has faced a challenge can likely find a piece of themselves in your journey. Vulnerability humanitizes us. The gravity of his words hung in the air. He had cruised through the doubts that had shackled her for so long with a deft awareness that caught her off guard. He didn't just see the potential in her speaking opportunity, he saw the woman behind it. Maybe that's what I've been missing, she thought, allowing the idea to sink in. Embracing vulnerability, could it truly be a form of strength? With each passing moment, their dialogue deepened. David shared his own hurdles, threading his entrepreneurial challenges into their exchange, creating a tapestry of shared vulnerability. She recognized twangs of awareness in herself, like a subtle awakening of courage. The conversation was a catalyst, nudging her closer to the identity she had fought to reclaim. What would it mean to speak honestly? She pondered aloud, testing the concept as it formed. It means finding power in your truth, David replied, his intensity underscoring the point. The more you articulate your experiences, the more others find comfort in them. That connection is powerful. Feeling invigorated, Sarah realized this meeting was not just a stepping stone for her upcoming talk. It was an opportunity to unearth hidden parts of herself. She wanted to dig deeper, but an insistent nagging doubt slipped into her mind again. If I lay myself bare, am I ready for the judgment? What if it hurts more than it helps? Just as she prepared to voice her concerns, David leaned forward, his voice lower. Everyone wrestles with self-doubt. It's the very thing that makes triumph possible. You won't know how resilient you truly are until you test your limits. His words sank in like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples through her perception. Challenged and inspired, Sarah's focus shifted inward. Clarity began to emerge amidst the chaos. The conversation veered toward life lessons and aspirations. As David spoke, she felt a sense of purpose awakening within her. Yet, with that awakening, brought a fresh torrent of questions. Was that clarity enough to buoy her? Would it translate into strength when she stood before as an audience? As they wrapped up their meeting, David extended an invitation to continue their discussions. He offered to help her prepare for her speaking engagement, a genuine interest in her success lighting his eyes. Sarah hesitated for the briefest instant, questioning whether she was ready to invite someone further into the tumultuous journey she had navigated alone for so long. Then she saw his sincere smile, an unspoken promise of support and encouragement. She nodded, a thrill of anticipation coursing through her. Yet, even as she left the cafe, a creeping worry nested in her mind. Would she share the weight of her past effectively enough to lift others, or would it sink her deeper into despair? The path stretched out before her, beckoning her onward. Her journey of resilience was poised to begin, but the specter of uncertainty loomed. Would she find the strength to face not only her audience, but the most difficult of critics, herself? As Sarah walked away from the cafe, her mind buzzed with reflections from her conversation with David. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting an amber hue that softened the harsh edges of her uncertainty. Yet, beneath that soothing warmth, a storm of thoughts churned. What power does vulnerability truly hold? She questioned internally, her footsteps echoing against the pavement. The exchanges with David had awakened a foundational truth. Her journey wasn't merely about overcoming failure, but about embracing it. Could she let others in, sharing not just her highs, but her lows, the moments which had shaped her? The weight of her past pressed against her chest with an urgency she hadn't felt before, a mixture of fear and anticipation intertwining like vines. She glanced at her reflection in a shop window, briefly catching sight of the woman staring back, determined yet unsteady, as if caught between two worlds. The clarity she sought seemed both tantalizingly close and disarmingly far. Later that night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, laptop open but absent of inspiration. She plucked at a crossword puzzle in front of her, the distraction offering little comfort. The once bustling cafe, the laughter and whir of machinery still resonated in her mind. How easily she had shared her fears with David. Why was it so challenging now to distill those insights into words? "Sarah, the question isn't what to say," she muttered to herself, "but how to feel." What had David advised? To articulate her experiences. But articulating felt like exposing herself to dissecting scrutiny. Each letter she typed felt weighty, each backspace echoing her insecurities. Suddenly, inspiration struck as she heard the faint sound of a siren in the distance. It was a reminder of how unpredictable life could be, chaotic yet beautiful. She began to write, pouring out her thoughts, the sleepless nights spent questioning, the layered grief of loss, and the intimate moments of hope that had started to pull her from the depths. Words formed like stepping stones, leading her onward. As the clock ticked past midnight, her fingers danced across the keyboard, entwining humor with sorrow, truth with anecdote. There was catharsis in the act of writing, each paragraph a resistance against her self-doubt. By the time she finished, the first glimmers of an outline for her speech emerged. The spiral of emotions that had once threatened to overwhelm her morphed into a narrative arc, a story of resilience embedded within the fabric of her struggles. That evening was a turning point. The words she had spun from her heart felt like armor, not just against judgment, but against her own self-criticism. She had created a blueprint, but the blueprint alone wasn't going to secure her success. It required practice, refinement, and an honesty only she could provide. Her thoughts then shifted back to David. He had offered more than just mentorship. He had extended an invitation into his world, one filled with support and challenge. Would leaning into this professionally fraught relationship nourish her growth? The following days unfolded with a disciplined rhythm. She was determined to meet David again, this time prepared not just to share, but to collaborate. As their meetings progressed, she sensed not just a mentor-mentee dynamic forming, but something akin to partnership, a chance to define her voice within an evolving narrative. Yet as she ventured deeper into this process, each session revealed a fraying thread of confidence that pulsed within her core. "People see you as you see yourself," she reminded herself one afternoon, staring at the half-formed words on her notes. Unplugging her phone, she decided it was time to confront another layer of her doubt. Could she embody the very truths she planned to share? Would she not just talk the talk, but walk the walk? Even as her preparations advanced, she felt an impending sense of confrontation waiting, staring directly into the fear of public perception. The next meeting with David loomed, a tangible reminder of the risk she was preparing to take. Sarah tightened her grip on her notebook, thoughts swirling with the acceptance that raw vulnerability was the sword she would wield. She couldn't hide behind it any longer. She wasn't just writing to inspire others, she was rewriting her own self-image with every word. Closing her eyes, she exhaled slowly. The time had come to face not just my audience, but myself. Where would that confrontation lead her, and what hidden strength awaited her beneath the vulnerability she was about to embrace? As the daylight faded into a cool evening, Sarah stood in front of the mirror, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock. The delicate sheen of sweat on her forehead betrayed her composure, and the reflection staring back was both familiar and foreign. Today wasn't just another meeting with David. It was a crucial point of contact that would not only test her resolve, but also challenge the very foundations she was building. With an incisive determination, she adjusted her blazer and pinned a small brooch on her lapel, a modest personal talisman representing hope and resilience. It reminded her of the journey she was navigating, a reminder that vulnerability didn't equate to weakness. She cleared her throat, the sound catching uncomfortably in the stillness of the room, as if even her voice feared the confrontation ahead. Making her way to the office, the streets sparked with life. People hustled past, engaged in their own narratives of ambition and struggle. Glancing at the bustling crowd, Sarah felt a pang of solidarity. Everyone carried their own burdens, their own reasons for fighting through another day. She could relate to that silent complexity, an understanding burgeoning within her of shared human experience. Arriving at the meeting room, the atmosphere felt charged. David was already there, seated with a casual ease that contrasted sharply with her inner turmoil. "You look ready," he complimented with a nod, pulling her focus away from her spiraling thoughts. "Ready for what?" she countered, an accidental hint of insecurity leaking into her tone. "To delve deeper, Sarah. Today, we're not just going to talk about your speech, we're going to unpack the layers beneath it." His gaze was steady, urging her to engage fully. Sarah swallowed hard, steeling herself. "I understand," she replied, the weight of her decision filling the air between them. "But I need to confront something first." It felt different today. Maybe the stakes were higher, or perhaps light was being cast upon inner shadows she had long avoided. "What's on your mind?" David asked, a patient curiosity guiding his inquiry. "I'm terrified," she confessed, the words tumbling out before she could retract them. "Terrified of being exposed. Not just to my audience, but to you. I've spent so long feeling inadequate, and this pursuit pulls back the curtain on those insecurities." In that moment, she stared into the depths of David's eyes, willing him to understand the magnitude of her admission. It wasn't merely about crafting a speech, it was about delivering a piece of her soul. David leaned forward, his expression earnest. "This vulnerability is your strength, Sarah." His words struck like lightning, illuminating the shadows of self-doubt. She realized that she was not merely a vessel for her narrative, she was its protagonist, a hero navigating the trials of her own story. She could transform her fear into a source of power, wielding it as a catalyst for connection, not just with her audience, but within herself. "I appreciate that," she inhaled sharply, much more assured now. "But along with vulnerability, I want to ensure that authenticity is present. I need to be honest, not decorative. How do I do that without being overwhelmed?" "You've already begun it by voicing your fear," he replied, a glimmer of admiration reflecting in his gaze. "True authenticity often comes when we lay bare our struggles, intertwining them within our messages. The more real you are, the more palpable your impact will be." As David articulated his thoughts, Sarah felt a wave of determination swell within her. Every story she chose to share, every remembrance she articulated, would not just inform her audience, but also fortify her own growth. She wasn't seeking merely approval, but connection, a sacred interplay that radiated from vulnerability. With newfound composure, Sarah began to outline the topics she wanted to touch upon, her voice gaining strength with each point. The journey of embracing the discomfort, navigating the highs, and facing the lows, it's all interconnected, she asserted, her body casting off previous timidity. "I want to make people feel seen. I want to remind them that we all carry scars. It's how we choose to live with them that matters." David nodded, impressed. "This is exactly the essence we need to communicate," he affirmed. "Now let's dive deeper." Hours passed as the two worked tirelessly, crafting not just a speech, but a transformative experience that reflected Sarah's genuine evolution. As she embraced her newfound confidence, a stirring thought flickered in her mind. What awaited her beyond this moment? Would her journey change the narrative, not just for herself, but for those who would resonate with her story? Sarah left the meeting room with an electric pulse of anticipation coursing through her veins. The confrontation with herself was merely the beginning. The presentation ahead loomed larger than she could predict. As she stepped into her next chapter, she felt the winds of change rallying around her, daring her to take the leap. What awaited her when she stood on that stage, ready to unveil her truth? The following day hung heavy with expectation. The morning sunlight streamed through Sarah's window, illuminating the notes spread across her kitchen table, a visual reminder of the journey she was about to undertake. Each point jotted down was not merely a part of her presentation. They were reflections of her evolution, pieces of her identity she was finally willing to share. As she sipped her coffee, the warm mug felt grounding in her hands. Her fingers traced the ceramic surface, anchoring her thoughts. Who would she become on that stage? This was no longer solely an opportunity for professional validation. It was a significant moment of personal reclamation. For years, self-doubt had wrapped around her like a shroud, suffocating any flicker of confidence. Yet now, anticipation sparked within her, igniting a heart that once felt dimmed. Rubbing her temples, she recognized the overwhelming wave of nerves that crested over her like a relentless tide. But in that turbulence, a quiet voice emerged, whispering that fear held power only if she allowed it. She pushed her chair back, rising with newfound resolve. Today, she would practice not just delivering her speech, but owning her story. In the designated rehearsal space, she stood alone, the expansive room echoing her solitary presence. As she scanned her notes, the fear that typically gripped her throat now felt like a shadow that could be cast aside. With each word she spoke into the empty space, her voice grew stronger, her delivery more confident, as if the very walls were absorbing her truth. Embracing discomfort, she echoed back to herself, the phrase feeling liberating. Each repetition felt like a mantra that chipped away at her insecurities. She imagined the audience, connecting them with her own recounting of struggles, the victories that emerged from the depths of despair. This was no longer a performance. It was an invitation to resonate, to connect on a deep, visceral level. However, as she continued, the internal momentum came to a halt when a thought intruded. What if her truth wasn't enough? What if they didn't see her passion? The surge of anxiety threatened to intertwine with her practice. With a deep sigh, she halted, grounding herself in a movement she had learned in her mindfulness classes. She took a step back, embracing the quiet around her. Yes, it's enough, she affirmed silently, shaking off the self-doubt that crept into her thoughts. The realization was powerful. Her worth wasn't dependent on external validation, but on the authenticity she chose to share. She reapproached her practice, infusing it with energy, deliberately visualizing the connection she aimed to forge. But as the hours slipped by, shadows loomed on the edges of her commitment. What would David think of her performance? Would he still champion her if she stumbled? The fear of disappointing him and herself made her heart race with an unwelcome urgency. This was not merely a test of her abilities. It was a confrontation with the specter of the past, the ingrained belief that she could not fail, because failure was simply not an option. Just as she wrestled with the weight of expectation, her phone buzzed on the table, jolting her from her spiraling thoughts. It was a text from David. Remember, the most powerful stories come from honest vulnerability. You've got this. Those words cut through the chaos, rekindling the fire within her. With a renewed focus, Sarah recognized a critical point. The meeting was not just a singular moment meant to showcase her capabilities. It was an opportunity for her to redefine her narrative, not just for herself, but for anyone who felt trapped by their own perception of inadequacy. She had to remember that her path had led her here, a place of self-discovery, resilience, and courage. As she practiced once more, each line transformed into a thread of connection that bound her to the audience she had envisioned. Equipped with newfound courage, she felt the tide of change pull her forward. Tomorrow's stage awaited, and the whispers of vulnerability promised to weave an undeniable tapestry of authenticity. But lurking in the back of her mind was another thought. The stakes were about to rise even further when she realized the CEO of the company would also be in attendance. Would this revelation propel her into deeper clarity or send her spiraling back into doubt? The night before her presentation felt impossibly long, yet strangely illuminating. Sarah lay awake, her mind restlessly turning over potential scenarios, unsure if excitement or dread held dominion over her thoughts. The idea of the CEO's presence loomed like a silent observer, judging her from the shadows, adding weight to the anticipated moment. She grappled with a paradox. This was her moment, yet it felt like an audition. She reflected on her past encounters with authority figures, the self-doubt that had often led her to play small, to avoid drawing attention. But something had shifted this time. Each conscious breath she took reminded her of her evolution. Just last year, she might have wilted under such pressure, but now the prospect filled her with a fierce determination. In the early dawn, with golden light filtering through her window, Sarah made a decision. She would transform this impending encounter into a declaration. She donned a carefully chosen outfit, professional yet decidedly true to her voice. Looking in the mirror, she practiced her first line, intent on not just speaking, but commanding the space. Yet insecurities flickered around the edges of her confidence. What if the CEO bashed her ideas in front of her colleagues? What if her delivery faltered? As she pulled on her blazer, she felt an echo of the fear that had gripped her throughout her career. But this time, she didn't flinch. Instead, Sarah channeled that apprehension into a desire to prove herself, not just to others, to the version of herself that had felt unseen for so long. With each step towards the venue, she focused on her breath, silently affirming her worth. This presentation was a culmination of her journey, a chance to showcase her insights and articulate her vision. The words she had carefully chosen were not just bullet points. They represented her story, her vulnerabilities, and her growth. As she entered the lobby, the buzz of conversation threatened to drown her resolve, but she steadied herself against the chaos. The room was filled with familiar faces and new ones, each presenting an opportunity for connection and dialogue. She scanned the crowd, looking for David's encouraging smile, a bastion amidst the uncertainty. A pre-presentation meeting was set where she had to warm up to her audience, and there he was, the CEO. Presenting to him would be an entirely different ballgame. As she took her place at the front, her heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the moment. A part of her wanted to shrink back. Instead, she took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This was the first step towards taking ownership of her narrative. "Let's begin," she said, allowing her voice to fill the room. As she spoke, she noticed small gestures of engagement from her colleagues. Some nodded, others whispered to one another. And then her gaze landed on the CEO. Their eyes met, a brief connection that felt both intimidating and invigorating. With each passing minute, she released the tension that had been tightly coiled in her chest. The words flowed, punctuated by her authentic emotion. Sarah spoke not just about achievements, but focused on the lessons learned from failures, the transformation that arose from setbacks. Embracing discomfort is not the end, it's the beginning of discovering our hidden strengths. Caught in the pulse of her own truth, she felt the room shift. Engaging with the audience became not a performance, but a dialogue where she discovered her own voice in new ways. The CEO leaned forward, brows furrowed in concentration, witnessing her authentic self. Still, a shadow of doubt sneaked into her mind. Would he recognize the depth of her journey? Would they all? But somewhere deep within, an unwavering resolve answered that question. This was her moment to flourish, and she would not distract herself with the weight of others' perceptions. But the journey was far from over. As she finished her presentation and the applause flowed around her, she caught the CEO's eyes again. His expression held an inquisitive spark, sparking a new vector of curiosity in her reflection. What would his thoughts reveal about her, not just as a professional, but as a person? Would he get to see the parts of her that thrived beneath the surface? Tomorrow, she might uncover not just the depths of her own story, but the hidden potential of what lay beyond. Would she be ready for whatever revelation awaited? The day following Sarah's presentation dawned bright and hopeful. Each ray of sunlight streaming through her window felt like a celebration of new beginnings. The vibrant colors of the world outside mirrored the sensations of exhilaration and triumph coursing through her veins. She had poured her heart into her talk, and the overwhelming support from her colleagues reminded her that she had indeed transformed. Walking into the office, Sarah was met with congratulatory remarks. "You were incredible," someone chimed with genuine admiration. Each kind word served as a buoy, lifting her spirit higher. Finally, she felt a sense of recognition she hadn't anticipated. An acknowledgement of her efforts not just as a professional, but as a woman of strength. As the day wore on, her phone buzzed with notifications, one standing out among the rest. It was David. "I'm proud of you. You spoke from your heart, and it resonated," he texted. Those words ignited a rush of warmth within her chest. Their interactions over the past weeks had forged a bond that transcended mentorship. It was one of mutual respect and understanding. Entering the break room, she spotted the CEO, a figure she had once perceived as intimidating. There he was, casually conversing with her teammates, laughter spilling from his lips, presenting a side to him she'd not yet seen. Perhaps the formalities would be relaxed after her presentation, she mused. A sudden burst of courage propelled her forward. She approached him, heart racing. "Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for attending my presentation yesterday," she began, collecting her thoughts like soldiers before a great battle. "It meant a lot to me." His gaze met hers, a deep blue that felt warm and inviting. "You conveyed something genuine. Your insights about resilience were necessary, especially in our field," he replied, his tone sincere. "What inspired you to speak on that topic?" he asked, genuinely interested. She realized that he was not merely being polite, he was invested in understanding her perspective. "It comes from my journey, what I've faced personally and how I've learned to navigate it," she explained, her confidence bolstered by his attentiveness. "I believe vulnerability connects us." He nodded deeply, a flicker of recognition playing across his face. "That's a powerful insight. We often forget the human side of our dynamics in business." Their conversation flowed, ideas exchanged effortlessly, each spoken thought a strand tying their professional destinies closer together. As the discussion deepened, he leaned in slightly. "You should consider applying for a leadership role within our team. It's clear you have valuable insights to offer." The ground beneath her feet felt slightly unsteady. "Me? A leadership role?" she stammered, the internalized doubts threatening to unsettle her newfound strength. "Yes, I believe you would excel. Your ability to reconcile personal experiences with professional insights is rare," he remarked, his expression unwavering. In that moment, Sarah realized she didn't just wish to be seen, she longed for validation of her journey. His recognition transformed like the first light at dawn, illuminating the shadows of her past insecurities. "Thank you," she finally whispered, shades of disbelief and gratitude intertwining as she absorbed the weight of his words. Would she dare to step into this new role and embrace everything that came with it? "Take your time to consider it, but know that I see great potential within you," he assured her, sealing his remark with an encouraging smile. Later that evening, Sarah sat in her favorite spot at home, enveloped in a blanket, Ethan curling beside her with a soft sigh. Her thoughts whirled, contemplating her growth. She was no longer just a girl who had faced loss, she was a woman who had emerged stronger. It was time to nurture this newfound confidence, to align it with her professional aspirations. She grabbed her notebook and began to map out the steps she might take toward pursuing that leadership position. The possibilities felt exhilarating as she crafted a plan. Each page became a canvas for her dreams, networking strategies, potential initiatives she could lead, and ways to incorporate her understanding of psychology to foster connection within a team environment. She paused, reminiscing about her journey thus far. Every hardship had forged her path, and for the first time, she saw a roadmap infused with bright splashes of hope and opportunity. In the days that followed, Sarah took the plunge and formally expressed her interest in the leadership opportunity. The support continued to pour in from her colleagues, reinforcing the strength she had found within herself. The reflections of doubt that had once shrouded her ambitions receded, replaced by solid confidence. She was ready to take the next step. It culminated into an exhilarating meeting where she thoroughly discussed her vision with the team's leadership. Ideas flowed, and she spoke with such conviction that she captivated the room. Sarah felt herself transforming, not just into a future leader, but into an advocate for authenticity. Days turned to weeks as her vision began to take shape. Each accomplishment, however minor, was a testament to her growth and earned recognition. Looking in the mirror became a routine of affirmations rather than insecurities. The reflection, once filled with uncertainty, now radiated competence, recognized not just for her academic achievements, but for everything she had become. A powerful transformation had occurred. Sarah was no longer the girl who guarded her vulnerabilities, but a woman who understood their strength. Embracing her past had forged the key to unlocking her true potential. She had conquered fear, not just for herself, but for every woman who questioned her own worth. As she prepared for another day, her phone buzzed again with a text from David. He expressed excitement about her next steps, foreshadowing a collaboration that would deepen their partnership. "Together, I believe we can create a culture of resilience," she replied, her heart lifting with each word she typed. She was ready. This final chapter wasn't just an ending, but a new beginning, one filled with aspirations, courage, and the promise that success comes to those who dare to face their truth. Now more than ever, Sarah understood that the journey of personal transformation extended beyond her alone. It was an ongoing narrative, alive and breathing, waiting to be shared. You need to subscribe now to this channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let the world hear these important messages. Comment below with your reactions and theories. What do you think her next step will be? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this empowering conclusion.